This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Abe Kamarck. Abe, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Kevin, thank you so much for having me
So tell our listeners a little bit about Abe. Who is Abe?
here. Abe is a dad, and he is the founder of True Made Foods. So we recently founded and started True Made Foods, which is a healthy food startup company that makes healthy ketchup and barbecue sauce, sriracha, out of vegetables. We cut the sugar, we add veggies instead, naturally sweetening our products and turning these junk foods into superfoods. But they taste amazing. And how do I know? Well, I got 4 kids, and I taste test all our ketchups on our 5-year-olds. And, if a 5-year-old doesn't like it, I'm not going to try to sell it. It's the ultimate taste test.
That's the perfect test market.
Exactly. They're the most honest people in the world when it comes to food, or what they like and don't like. Yeah. And before this, originally I started my adult life as a Navy pilot. I went to Vanderbilt on an ROTC scholarship and became a helicopter pilot. Flew in the Navy for eight and a half years. Ended up getting stationed in England for my shore duty, working counterterrorism there. And then moved on. Again, while I was there, I was lucky enough to get my MBA at London Business School. And that encouraged me to get out and try new things. But I made a terrible decision. Timing is everything. So never leave the military right as a gigantic, the biggest recession in the last 100 years starts. So that's what I did in 2008. I left the military.
Yeah, that's a great year. Good year to choose. That's right.
Yeah, and we were in London, so that was like ground zero of the. If you thought it was bad,
the economic collapse. That's exactly right.
London was worse, and so my MBA was worth about zilch, and nobody gave a crap. Everyone wanted to hire anybody that had 8 years of, being in the military, especially not in Europe. They really just didn't care. So, I ended up using my experience in emerging markets, and ended up just working in emerging markets and innovation for a few years. So we lived overseas, and I lived in Bulgaria, and then by myself, and then moved my whole family over to the Middle East for 4 years. We lived in Doha, Qatar for 4 years, and from there I traveled a lot to different places where I picked up odd jobs, tried all kinds of different things. I made a little bit of money, and then we finally moved back here in 2013 because I got hired by a charity as an entrepreneur because they needed somebody who could launch products from post-conflict areas. And I was that kind of person who could go to Eastern Uganda and set up a deal to buy coffee from a cooperative in Eastern Uganda that had never sold coffee to the US before, and import it and brand it and get it out to the market. And so that's actually what got me into food. When I saw what was happening with the food industry and how everything was, the market was shifting, and the big guys weren't keeping up, and there was a real market opportunity, I got excited and jumped in myself. So
it's interesting. You mentioned kind of the coffee area of in Uganda. I mean, that Uganda, Rwanda is kind of an emerging market for coffee, isn't it? I mean, were you there on kind of the leading edge of that region? I mean, it's a beautiful part of the world. But
it's amazing. Yeah. What was really cool is, Rwanda has a much more developed coffee industry than Uganda. Uganda, ironically, has developed like there's 2 types of coffee beans, Robusta and Arabica. Most people drink Arabica, it's a higher end coffee. The ones that Arabica is grown at altitude in mountains, typically. But Uganda and their lowlands actually developed Robusta coffee farms. But they hadn't developed the Arabica side, and they share Mount Elgon in the eastern part of Uganda with Kenya. And on the Kenyan side, there's amazing coffees coming out that are, cost a ton of money because it's a volcanic soil and amazing, amazing environment for coffee. And the Uganda side, they really hadn't developed it at all, and it had been a really depressed area. A lot of conflict post Idi Amin, during Idi Amin's reign, and then that just lasted for years afterwards. That really tore it up. And it's far from Kampala and things like this. So luckily, it wasn't in the north where they had most of the conflict with the LRA. But you don't want to get into too much Uganda stuff. But
that's just one small window in your bio that we talked about a little bit off camera. But I'm really interested in just the kind of the whole transition. So I mean, it's amazing. Is it, what's the saying that says, what invention is or the necessity is the mother of invention, or something like
Right.
so it sounded like out of almost desperation for work,
Mhm.
some of these things were born into, kind of your experience in your work career. So walk us
Yeah.
through that transition a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, basically, early on, like coming out, you go to one of these top flight MBA programs, and they they teach you great stuff and things like this. But one of the things they do is they build you up to think that, like, oh, you with your MBA, you're going to be able to do anything. You're walking in any job, and da, da. And I mean, that's just not really accurate, because they're graduating. Harvard graduates 1,000 people a year, right? And
Mm,
so,
yeah,
we were graduating 400 people a year at London Business School and things like this. And so there's only so many top flight jobs. And um, and really, if you don't know what you want to do, it's not super easy to just walk into something. And at the end of the day, most big HR departments still look at your background, more than anything else.
yeah,
Um, so, and I didn't have a good plan. And then getting into getting out in the recession, basically, I learned early on, or at least it got ingrained in me, that I had to make my own way. I couldn't just rely on finding a job or going through the job search. I also never really got good at it either. So I think that was, and I had such a terrible experience with it, early on, that like it just kind of forced me to kind of really focus on kind of building my own, income and building my own career. And so that's
sure.
what drove me into this. Yeah.
Now, were you at Lakenheath in England, or were you in London, or where were you stationed?
I was actually at the Jack Molesworth, the Joint Analysis Center, RAF Molesworth. So it was about the same different distance from Cambridge, but west of Cambridge. Well, Lakenheath is east of Cambridge. So
Okay.
we lived in Cambridge, and then yeah, RAF Molesworth is actually, it's an intel base for the U.S. European Command. So it's a weird place. Luckily, they had 3 slots. When I was leaving the squadron, I told my skipper I wanted to go back overseas, because just I loved, being in the thick of it. And my wife, who was my fiance at the time, said she was getting out of the Navy and she wanted to get a grad degree. So she wanted to go somewhere where she could get a grad degree. So I asked my skipper, maybe if you could get London, and Navier, Naval Forces Europe, which used to be in London, which was a sweet deal, was just shutting down then and moving to Italy. So I missed out on that, but my skipper was amazing, and I was one of the top pilots, so he would, he pushed for me. So he found this job at this intel base, and so I ran operations at this intel base for 3 years, and so that was pretty amazing.
And
It
this
was
was
a great.
08 to 11, about?
Oh no, this was earlier. This was 04 to 07, 08.
Okay. All right. It's interesting because from 05 to 12, we were 30 minutes south of London.
No,
So
no way.
yeah, we were within a driver 9 iron of where you lived. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've been through that area many times. But so you got your MBA right at the height of the recession. And then, as one does, you move to the Middle East. So how in the world did that opportunity even arise? And I mean, I think like I read somewhere you created a company. Is it Doha Delivery or something like that? Or
Yeah, yeah.
so
Well,
walk us through that a little bit.
well, first we moved back after the Bulgaria thing. We moved back to the U.S., and my wife got a job with the Rand Corporation in Northern Virginia, here in Arlington. And so we were living here briefly, but I didn't have a job. We had 2 kids. We still had school loans, and the job she got just did not pay very well as an analyst. My wife is highly educated, and but she works in public policy, so highly educated and poorly paid,
Yeah.
right? So like,
Yeah. Yeah. And you live in an expensive part of the country.
yeah, and a
So it's
terribly
the
expensive
perfect
part of
storm.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the recession was still, it was like '09 at that point, and the recession was still pretty bad.
Yeah.
So, and I had given up my security clearance to go work in Bulgaria, so there was no, I wasn't getting back into the industry. So yeah, I started working and focusing on emerging markets and grants and contracts and development contracts in emerging markets. And I formed a small company in we ended up winning, partnered with a few people, and I ended up winning a contract in Egypt and a contract in Ghana. And right around then, actually, my wife's discovered that her firm at the time had an office in Doha in Qatar, and she got nominated to fill a role there. And we were like, you know what? Tax free, free of like, they give us a housing allowance there,
Yeah.
all this kinds of
Yeah.
stuff, increase
Yeah.
in benefits. Let's do it. Amazing benefits. So I was like, let's do it. I'm going to be flying to Egypt and Ghana anyway. So like, I can do that from anywhere.
Yeah. It's a lot shorter flight from there than it is from here.
Yes, exactly. And so we moved over there, and while we were there, we moved there in 2010, and that was right when 2010, that just about a year into us moving there, they won the World Cup for 2022.
Yeah, that's right.
And everything at the time seemed like, oh my God, Doha is exploding. Qatar is really growing. It's going to be the next Dubai, et cetera. And so, but it was still very undeveloped. And so, with an entrepreneurial mindset, you're just like going crazy thinking about all the things, the possibilities. And so I just jumped in, and like one of the first things I did was we realized, okay, there's almost no websites even at the time. Like you couldn't find anything online, any information. And, delivery was huge there. Food delivery was a gigantic thing in the Middle East. And you couldn't find the menus online. You couldn't even find the restaurants online. They didn't even have websites.
No Uber Eats, no Grubhub, no
nothing like that. And so so initially I just started grabbing menus and putting them online, creating a database and just putting them online, stuff like that. And then we created a website, Doha Delivery, and then I contracted out with these Polish developers, and we started turning it into something real. And we started creating, online ordering, things like that, figuring out ways for the restaurants to work with it. We were one of the most popular websites in Doha for quite a few years there. And we're still ranked really high in SEO. It was an amazing opportunity. But but you really have to look at the whole thing. It's really difficult because there's no addresses, right? There's no
absolutely. Welcome to the Middle East.
Yeah. I don't think people realize in the U.S. like how easy we have it here with things like like a fixed address or even zip codes and stuff like this. And there are no addresses, no zip codes. I mean, so how do you map these things for the drivers? Really difficult. There were no online payment systems. Like PayPal was banned in Doha. Like if you wanted to do it in Qatari riyals or things like this. Looking back, I could have set up something with like an offshore account and taken dollars and figured things out and like transferred money, but not sure it would have been worth it. And we got amazing traffic from the customer side. A lot of people are on our site all the time, ordering things like that, or using our menus. But the restaurants were really slow to adopt it. And that's where you make your money, is getting the restaurants to pay, right? And so it was a real struggle. The restaurants were really slow to adopt it. They were very wary of anything different or new, or any type of new technology. The managers were not the owners in any way, shape, or form. The owners were off doing their own thing somewhere else. Managers, all they wanted to do was just keep their jobs, and that just meant doing day-to-day stuff. And they were they just didn't understand it. They'd never seen it before, things like this. So it was really difficult to convert the restaurants on, and that was kind of our ultimate thing. Looking back, if I should have actually put more time, effort, and money into this, because a year or two after we left, online ordering kind of finally reached the Middle East and exploded, and there were a bunch of acquisitions, and we probably could have been swept up, easily could have swept up by somebody trying to get in there if we had. But I was always, it's a terrible, online ordering is a terrible business model. I mean, the margins are tiny. You have to get so much volume. Doha was a really small market. The time the country only had 2 million people, and it only had 1 million people, I think, we were living there, and over half of them were migrant workers, who aren't online.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it was a really small market, and so it really wasn't justifiable necessarily as a business on its own, but like we still probably could have gotten acquired and probably done okay if I had just put in. So that's a lesson to be learned right there. It's really hard to tell these types of things, right? And where to put your effort or your time.
It's really interesting. I mean, and just my personal experience of being in places, outside the US. I mean, the entrepreneurial mindset is almost like a unicorn outside. I mean, it is so prevalent here in the States versus, you talked about this, the restaurant managers or whatever were slow to adopt or whatever. Actually, it's interesting. I mean, I remember our times in the UK when we would go into shops and, be completely ignored, or, and you're like going, isn't your business to sell things? Yeah, we're here with cash to buy something, and you're
Uh,
you're
or
almost acting like it's an inconvenience,
or they like
type
they
thing.
close at 5 p.m. in the UK, and they'll like
Absolutely, everything shuts
4:55
down.
they're like locking the door and
Yes,
like not letting you in.
as you're walking up, yeah,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
cash, showing them cash. So
Ready to buy something.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll tell you a very very quick story about our time in the UK. We were my boss, who was also an American, was in walking to or going into a mattress store to buy a mattress, and they had just moved to the UK, and he said, "Yeah, we want this mattress," and the guy said, "Well, the only one we have is this display model." And he said, "That's fine, we'll take it." And he said, "Well, if I sell that one to you, I won't have one." And it's like, we thought that was the point.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole,
You
I
don't
mean, I
want.
love my Brit cousins, my Brit brothers, but yeah, it is a different mindset for sure.
Yeah.
It's certainly a different mindset. But so, cycle through, you go through Qatar, you're back in the States. What was the transition back, and was it a job change for your wife, or what was kind of the story, and how'd you end up back here? And then walk us through, how you get from delivering food to making ketchup.
Well, I mean, and we were just finally getting really frustrated with Doha. Just needed to get out, and so that's why we left.
Plus, it's hot.
Yeah, there was a. I mean, still have some great friends there. A lot of Qatari. I had a Qatari business partner. She was amazing. She ended up going to MIT Sloan, and now she almost runs stuff back there. But really amazing people there and things like that. A lot of great friends that we're gonna have for lifetimes. But it's a people don't realize it's a very dangerous place in the Middle East, and not like what most Americans think. It's not really the terrorism dangerous.
Hmm.
It's like the driving is dangerous. Like
Mm,
you know, the driving is insane, and when you have small kids, it can get really frantic. I mean, it's just constant stress from that. The construction is really bad, so there were fires all the time.
yeah.
Like there was a major fire in a mall there, and a nursery school. A bunch of kids died in the
Mm,
nursery in the fire, and it's all bad no regulations, no fire codes, no things like this. And again, people complain about government I will never complain about government regulations again after living in the Middle East. Like
yeah.
we don't realize how good we have it, having this political bureaucracy over us. Like things like
Yeah.
this. Yeah, it can be annoying, but trust me, it keeps you alive.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
kind of like what we used to say when we were pilots, like our NATOPS, our instructional manuals written in blood, right? It was
Mm,
we have all these instructions and these huge instructional manuals and regulations because people died.
yeah.
And I think that we see that a lot even here in the U.S. in business and stuff like that. Somebody died sometimes to make that regulation,
Mm,
and it may not be right. Maybe can be improved, but like, trust me, it's better than seeing 19 kids die of smoke inhalation from
for
all.
sure.
So, but yeah, that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. We were like, we had small, thick kids. Our daughter was born over there, so we had 3 kids at the time, and we were like, okay, we need to get back to the U.S.
Hmm.
So that's what brought us back, really, at the end of the day.
And that was about when, and kind of walk through the transition of how you started your True Made Foods here.
Yeah, so that was when was that? That was 2013. We moved back summer
Okay.
2013, and I started interviewing, looking around for jobs in the DC market, and so I picked up the job with the charity because that seemed like the most exciting prospect, and that got me into the food thing. What happened with True Made Foods is about a year into launching the coffee. Right when we finally launched the coffee, things are going really well. Coffee started we made like the first $20,000 in sales in the first month, and then the charity ran out of money. They would burn through their all their cash, and they didn't have a good fundraising strategy, and so the coffee was doing well, but not enough to support the charity, right?
Sure.
At the time. And
Yeah.
so they let everybody go. And so at that point, I was really frustrated because I just poured my heart and soul into launching something. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when you're that type of person who just like loves building these things up and launch, you really get wrapped up in it. And then you realize, you know what, it's not yours, you know, and somebody could just take it away from you and fire you. And so that's really what kind of pushed me to, because I figured when you really go do something crazy like True Made Foods and really start a new food company or something like that, you have to be a little bit nuts, or have a lot of money. And like I was definitely a little bit nuts, and it was, you know, getting fired that really kind of pushed me over the edge and kind of said, you know what, I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm just going to drive it again. Kind of building out from, like, you know, having to deal with the recession and, you know, years of, you know, coming out of the military into the recession, you know, kind of drove it home for me. Okay, I can only really rely on myself.
So how did you specifically decide what you were going to, so did you think, okay, generally I'm going to be in the food space, and then just specifically this just kind of had an epiphany one day? I mean, what was that? Kind of drill down a little bit on that.
Yeah, it was kind of everything just kind of happened. It kind of came together. I wanted to stay in the food space. Initially, I just, you know, spent a year becoming an expert, quote unquote, in coffee, right? And so I thought, you know, maybe I should stay in coffee, and I was looking at that. And then this guy, I had a co-founder initially, and yeah, I'd met him years before, and then he got back in touch with me, and he said he had tried to launch something similar, but it had failed miserably. And but when he told me about the idea of putting vegetables in ketchup, it set off a light for me, because I was like, that's a brilliant idea. Because as a parent, this was one of my biggest problems. I hated ketchup. I thought it's red corn syrup. It's terrible for you. It's got more sugar than ice cream, ounce per ounce. Right?
Wow.
Ketchup and barbecue sauce are like one of the two worst things. And sriracha, Hoi Fong sriracha has more sugar than ketchup. Those condiments in your refrigerator are probably some of the worst things in your refrigerator. Most barbecue sauces have more sugar than soda, ounce per ounce.
Mm.
And all ketchup and sriracha have more sugar than ice cream, ounce per ounce. It's terrible for you. But and so I, you know, had these dreams of being the parent whose kids didn't eat ketchup, high ambitions, and that failed miserably. Yeah, and my kids were eating ketchup all the time. And of course, we grill out, we cook, we love going to barbecue restaurants. Like, we were going to barbecue almost every other week. It's a big part of our life. We're not going to give that up, and we grill constantly and stuff like that. We always cook out with family and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And so trying to, you know, fix this, and you can buy better meat, you can cook things healthier, you can have healthy side dishes, but if somebody's pouring ketchup and crappy barbecue sauce all over everything, it's just ruining it. So for me, that was a personal thing for me. Like, it was just a huge thing. And then I grew up cooking with an Italian mother who taught me to cook early on as the oldest child to help out. And so I grew up learning how to make pasta sauce with carrots as a natural sweetener. And my mom always said, lazy Italians use sugar. So like, I learned early on that veggies can be a natural sweetener. And as a parent, I've always like tried to hide veggies into everything my kids eat anyway. And so this just, everything kind of came together when I heard about this idea about putting veggies in ketchup. I was like, well, if carrots work for pasta sauce, it could work for ketchup as well. And, you know, luckily it did. The guy I started the company with, like, he didn't know how to cook. He was a disaster. And he, so I had to take the idea and kind of push it in the right direction and get it going. And then that's how, you know, we initially developed and started the products that way. And then we've been working with a food scientist. So as soon as I was able to raise a little bit of money, I hired a food scientist
Mm-hmm.
to help us, you know, really kind of take it to the next level, because you really need some type of expertise to really take things out of the kitchen and make them more scalable recipes, things like that. So now I don't have to do any experimenting anymore. I can just kind of come up with concepts, experiment a little bit on my own, and then, you know, work with the food scientist, and she can figure out how to make it into, you know, they take that concept and turn it into a scalable recipe.
Right. Now it's one thing to kind of come up with a new idea, new healthy alternative to a condiment or whatever. It's a whole other thing to kind of carve out some space in the shelves of a
Yeah.
Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or something like that, or even the average supermarket. You know, I'm sure Heinz and Hunt's and the big boys are going, no, we don't really want your little ketchup substitute here in our space. So How do you battle the big boys?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, well, you got to pick your space. Luckily, again, everything's moving in this direction.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, stores are looking. Buyers say they're looking for new, better products. They're looking to capture that consumer, and capture more dollar baskets to that consumer. Um, Grocery is, for good and bad, grocery is in complete upheaval in the United States. Like, there's a complete revolution going on out there. Um, and grocery stores are trying to figure out what to do. They don't know what's happening. It's really, what's happening is, and this is good and bad. It's good because it's creating this opportunity as an entrepreneur, because the market is changing. It's bad because we still rely on this infrastructure to sell our products,
Mm-hmm.
and like, it's in complete upheaval, right? So things are changing all the time, and so that makes things harder
Right.
sometimes to get on the shelf, because, like, you could have a buyer saying they want to get you on the shelf, and then all of a sudden they realize, you know what, we need to shore up our margins or something like that, and so we're getting rid of all small products that aren't making us
Yeah.
money, or aren't paying us as much to be on the shelf, because you have to pay to be on the shelf a lot
Right.
of times. So yeah, you have to kind of, and that also means your sales strategy is much more difficult. Like, from the very early on, our advisors and stuff like that say, okay, you need a sales strategy. You need to focus. Okay, this is where you're going to go, either channel or region. The channel sales strategy used to be when you launched a food company. You started in your local health food stores and then Whole Foods, and you kind of built out through Whole Foods, into a region and then nationally, and then you could start expanding out into more conventional stores like your Safeways and Kroger's
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Whole Foods, the last few years, even before the Amazon acquisition, really kind of changed that. They were changing everything. They were making it much more difficult. They kept changing where the buying was done. Right before the Amazon acquisition, they were changing constantly between buying regionally or buying in Austin,
Mm-hmm.
where the decisions are being made. And now much more of the decisions are made in Austin too, at the headquarters. So going Whole Foods first is really a much more difficult channel strategy anymore. So you have to figure out something new. We made huge mistakes. I made huge mistakes early on, just trying to get sales anywhere. And everybody tells you not to do that. I still did it because I thought, ego. I thought we could weather the storm and make it through. And plus, I was just so determined to build sales and
Mm-hmm.
make the product work. And so we ended up getting kicked out of a lot of stores early on. Really, almost killed the company a couple times. I really should have, we went into some bad stores that were not good fits for us,
Mm-hmm.
things like this, and we hadn't tested out the design and the packaging and the labeling enough, and that really almost killed us. And so we've had to reassess, and then we just focused on region instead. So we developed a strategy. I developed a strategy focusing on our region. So we focused kind of Mid Atlantic and Northeast,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of built there. Because then, even if you go into, say, like a Safeway, we went to Safeway up here in the DC area, and there's going to be problems. The shelves aren't always going to be filled. Things aren't going to be put out, all that kind of stuff. But you can reach all those stores when you're close to it, right?
Right.
If you're in your
Right.
home region.
Yeah.
I can go around and check the stores, make sure things are going okay. You can build it up. You can build up enough demand to get this stuff selling off the shelf. You can really support it. And then we slowly expanded out to the Midwest, and now we're finally going national and expanding nationally. So we launched Sprouts last year, which really took us national, and Walmart launched us in 1,200 stores as well. And so with one of our SKUs just to catch up, and
Mm-hmm.
so we've been growing that like crazy, and now we're going full national and trying to get as many stores as possible, because we've seen it work and we've kind of gotten it down, and we're about to launch a new label too, which we think will help even more. So
That's a
uh,
pretty, I mean, in this, the short period of time you've talked, which since you've launched this, I mean, it looks like a kind of an upwardly curving hockey stick there on your growth chart. I mean, if you, especially, to break into a Walmart at that level, it's,
mhm.
and that's a pretty broad range of stores for them. I mean, it's not like a 50 store test market or something like
Right.
that. And as you were talking, I was wondering about, um, did you have to educate your market, or has the market matured enough, with the advent of people wanting organic, and they're wanting, locally sourced and
And no
farm to
sugar. So
table, and no sugars and whatever. I mean, is it just kind of like, did you hit this Kairos moment that, it's a mature market or a ready market, and you had a good product to fit?
it's kind of both. I mean, we screwed up early on by just having really fancy looking labels that didn't call out our differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
Why we were better. The extra veggies in it, or the low sugar, no sugar, and trying to get that message right on a still without making the label too busy has been our challenge for the last 4 years. I think our new labels for 2020, I think we finally got it
Mm-hmm.
now. And also figuring out what that hierarchy is, and that changes with what's happening in the market. So I think early on, and still one of our challenges is that people don't realize that ketchup is such a problem, like it's how unhealthy it is,
Yeah.
right? Or they think it's just a condiment, so who cares, right? But if you're a family who buys a bottle of ketchup a month, you're eating 150 donuts worth of sugar a year, like, and that's that much sugar just
Wow.
going through one bottle of ketchup a month. And so, but we still have that problem where people think it's not a big deal, or they don't know, it's not as prevalent. So there's an education piece on that, but it's happening. It's starting to
Mm-hmm.
happen. And what we saw, there was other competitors that started to come out that did no sugar ketchup. So there's some, artificial sweetener ketchups. Heinz has one. There's another one out there, and they really started to explode. The artificial sweetener ketchups, just because they were able to say no sugar on the front.
Right. But
And
it's not any better. I mean,
right, no,
matter of fact, it's
it's
might
probably
even be
worse.
worse for you.
Might
Yeah,
even be
that's right.
worse for you, right? But if you're diabetic, or your
Mm-hmm.
doctor tells you not to eat that, you need to cut out sugar. You see that, you don't read the label, you buy it. So that showed me that there is this huge demand for it, and because us as a completely natural product, where we're getting all our sweetness just from things like carrots and butternut squash,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's much healthier for you on so many different levels. I thought, if we can weather this and get through and really start to create a shelf presence, we are going to, all that money that I see them making right now, all those sales dollars are going to be moving over to our
Right.
brand. And
Right.
so that was where we needed. That's how I've been focused. Things like that.
It's an amazing strategy, and I mean, if you could ever educate the market, it would almost be a no-brainer decision on their part. I mean, if those are the two alternatives that they had. So
That's a
at least
yeah.
from a untrained eye like mine, I mean, just looking at the two options. But I wanted to ask you, so I mean, I can tell that this is not just a business, that you're not just selling widgets to people. So I mean, there's a passion behind this, that and a drive behind this. I mean, so what would you say, really, if you want to define your why, as Simon Sinek would say, what is your why as it relates to this business?
Yeah, our why is happy families. As a dad, I got 4 kids now, and I think a big problem with the food industry, really there's a big problem with the conventional food industry, is they try to sell you America, but they're selling you poison, right?
Mm,
The Coca-Cola commercials, the Heinz commercials, they're trying to sell you like this happy America thing, and they show healthy, people and stuff like this, but they're selling you straight poison,
mm,
and they're killing people. But they're making America less competitive. Sugar, all this stuff, obesity makes you dumb and makes you slow, makes it so a majority of Americans can't even qualify for military service
mm,
anymore.
yeah.
Um, this is a major problem. So that's on one side, and then I see the natural products industry, um, like focusing on completely on the 24-year-old Instagrammer, right? And not thinking about families, making things completely inconvenient for kids or families, things like this, or just whitewashing things and just sticking sugar, saying, okay, it's natural, but it's because we use organic sugar. Like, I'm sorry, it's still just as bad for you. So
Right.
these are two things that were really frustrating me. And it was really frustrating me that you take your kids to whether it's their school lunches, or you take it out to you have a baseball game, or a church picnic, or anything, or any type of fundraiser for the little league, and it's all terrible food. And or the concessions at the Friday night football game, it's all terrible food. It's the cheapest foods that the boosters could buy, and it's just, it's all sugar, it's all poison. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like, you can make super healthy, great food. We always used to have it. And you can still have this comfort food without having to have everything loaded with sugar and corn syrup. And that's, my big challenge is, like, I want to get back to that type of America. Maybe it's like, it's our great grandparents' America when it comes to food,
Yeah.
kind of thing. If I looked at, my great grandmother was from Luray, Virginia. And so she was in the household when my dad was growing up. So and was always the cook. And so, like, most of my dad's influence comes from her cooking, and all her recipes. There's a lot of pork fat and a lot of butter, but there is no sugar in anything that's not a dessert. And the amount of sugar in the desserts is like a fraction of what you would see sugar in the dessert recipes you see.
Yeah.
Because it was expensive back then. Sugar was expensive. It was a rare use commodity. It was something you treated as a
luxury.
Luxury, exactly.
Yeah.
And vegetables were everywhere. They were growing them in the garden, stuff like that. And they were cooking, sweet potatoes and carrots and everything were in everything. And so I think we want to go back to that. I mean, I look at barbecue, and barbecue should not be unhealthy for you. It is, you're eating, especially like real barbecue, when you're eating a pork shoulder or brisket or something like that, it has a lot of collagen in it, which people are buying in powder form and eating every day, taking in drinks and stuff like this, because it's so the natural form of collagen comes in barbecue and that's where the flavor comes from in barbecue. And why you have to smoke it for so long is because it's hard to cook that. So you have to smoke it low and slow to get that flavor out. So barbecue is a natural source of collagen. The real ingredients for real barbecue are mainly things like apple cider vinegar, which people are drinking on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
For health.
Yeah.
Turmeric, sage, all these healthy spices, sea salt, these kinds of things, black pepper, red pepper, all these things that people are eating, and all these, natural health benefits.
Supplements.
And supplements. Yeah.
Right.
And garlic and stuff like that. And this is the type of thing that, so barbecue used to be actually very healthy food. It's very common, like easy food. It only got ruined with all the sugar that's been poured on all of it. And now, barbecue sauces and barbecue rubs are almost all sugar, and which means you're not tasting the barbecue. You're just tasting the sugar, because it overwhelms all your sugar, overwhelms all your other tastes. So yeah, I'm very passionate about changing this in America and getting us back to a place where we can appreciate real food. As somebody who always grew up like in a household where we cooked everything and grew stuff and stuff like that, like we I've always been shocked and surprised with the amount of crap people eat, and not understanding how healthy food actually tastes better when it's done right.
Yeah.
So and how it should be the Americana of the world. Healthy food should be what is America, not Coca-Cola and Heinz. Coca-Cola and Heinz should be seen as the enemy of America right now.
That's a great marketing job they've done. McDonald's has sold us the
they're like the most American thing.
Oversized Big Mac.
Yeah, and they're literally killing us, like making us less safe. Because and they there's on every Navy base in America there's a McDonald's.
Yep.
And that's hurting our national security, right? Because it makes these people, the men and women who are serving in the military, less capable.
Yeah.
Like and that's a major problem. And these are the type of things that I want to change. So this is not the country I want my kids to be growing up in.
Right. Well, I'm curious on this, where I'm headed with this, because I think I know the answer to this question, but I never want to put words in our guest's mouth. But if you had to start tomorrow, what would you do? If this was gone and you were starting again tomorrow, what would be, if just to help some listeners out that are thinking about, what I want to start something, what would you do, and what would be maybe 2 or 3 really quick foundational steps you would take to kind of get the ball rolling?
Number one, I would have found a better co-founder. That can cost you so much time, energy, and money. You make sure you get the right people on your team.
Yeah, partner with the right
things like this.
Yeah.
I've found great partners now that I'm working with right now who are amazing people. I wish I had started with them from the beginning. Um, like Ed and Ryan Mitchell, our barbecue sauce partners down in North Carolina.
Hmm.
Fantastic. And Vanessa, who works with us, see her on our website. She's amazing. I wish they had been my founders and not my initial founder. Get the right people on board. And then actually, to be honest, is like prepare for things to take longer than need to be, and don't raise money too early. Again, I think I tried to go too fast, too hard, and a little bit of too much ego right there, coming off of being fired. Probably was that which drove me that level, trying to grow too fast. Take some time to really figure it out. Uh, test, take extra time to test out the idea and get things right, and before you really start to put the accelerator down. Because if you start putting the accelerator down when the product's not not really ready, you can make a mistake. And I think part of that's kind of the entrepreneurial culture we had over the last 10 years of kind of like the build fast and break things
Sure.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
That lean startup mentality. Yeah. The whole,
Yeah, lean startup
MVP.
mentality. Yeah, that can be used the wrong way. I mean, there's still great lessons there, and obviously, the MVP is a great lesson. And I'm still saying to do that. The key is just don't start putting thousands and thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars behind your MVP right away.
Right.
Take the time to get it right before you really start leveraging.
Is
So
it the issue? Is the problem with raising funds too fast? Is it the fact that you give a portion of your equity away too early? Is it you don't have it tested the market? You're too far and you spend it too quickly. You're wasting money. What's the issue around don't raise funds too
yeah,
quickly?
the problem with raising money too fast or too early is that the second you take somebody's money, you are on a timeline.
Mm,
Second you take investment, you're on a timeline. You have got to hit metrics. You've got to raise your sales so you can increase your valuation.
yeah.
So that when you need to raise money again, and so then you're almost under too much pressure to spend money. You know what I mean? And to chase sales that might not be right for the company, or when you're not ready to chase sales, and or try to spend money marketing and pushing something that isn't ready to sell, and you can waste a lot of money on marketing trying to push a product that isn't quite ready for the market yet.
Yeah, that is really great advice. And I mean, I kind of love just the foundational steps that you kind of gave us about, choosing well when you're going into partnership or who your co-founders are. Be prepared. It's going to take longer than expected.
Yeah.
Don't raise funds and don't raise nor or spend funds too early and too quickly. And then really the last one is just really take the time to test the idea, really
Mm-hmm.
test it well, and really know your product, know your market, how they
Be
fit
your worst
together.
critic. Yeah.
Absolutely, be your worst critic. So I love that. And but you think that if you started tomorrow you would be in kind of the health food space?
Yeah, it's about this industry is very hard. It's been an eye opening. It looks easy from the outside. Well, it doesn't look easy, but it looks easier from the outside. And Yeah, I mean, I do love it though. Like I really do. Like I just get super passionate about it, which is probably bad. I think there are much better spaces to be in. Tech seems to be, the valuations are higher. You can raise more money without ever having to have sales, things like that. Um, yeah, and so many that, if you're in cybersecurity or something like that, so many different options.
Yeah, it's a little easier than a
Sure.
new ketchup alternative. Hey,
Right.
I want to ask you, did your product have to taste like what we expect ketchup to taste like for it to be, or
I mean, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now if our ketchups didn't taste as close to as possible to a conventional Heinz ketchup, because
yeah,
you admit that they own that piece. There's even like when we started by Founders, there was a 2010 article written by Malcolm Gladwell called the ketchup conundrum, and it talked about why there's multiple different types of mustard and only one ketchup, right? And it's because ketchup has become just this one flavor profile. And if you
mm,
deviate too far for that flavor profile, it doesn't taste like ketchup, and people don't think it's ketchup, right? And so So from the very beginning, if we didn't have a product that tasted just like ketchup, or tasted so close to the ideal ketchup, I would have done this. And that's actually what kept me going even through the times when we screwed up and we failed, is I knew that we had a really good product, and
Hmm.
I was always kind of product first, kind of person,
Yeah.
um, which instead of marketing first. And so that's really kind of what kept me going, is kept the passion going through the hard times. That is, I knew we had a really good product with a really good opportunity. Yeah, and again, like I tested it on 5-year-olds, on little kids and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and they are obviously, for something like this, for ketchup, they are the best taste testers or testers, to
No
tell you.
doubt about it. We've come full circle in the chat today. We started out with the 5-year-old test market, and we circled back
Back to it.
to the same
Right.
focus group that we had before. So, tell our listeners where your products can be found, and is it? I mean, it's not primarily on the Eastern Seaboard anymore. I'm assuming
Right.
that it's kind of made its way across the country and possibly even some international destinations. But tell us where that we can find it, and maybe specifically outline what the products specifically are.
Yeah. So our company is True Made Foods, and if you go to truemadefoods.com, you can see most of our stores there, and that's where we're sold. And we sell online. And if you go to amazon.com/True Made Foods, you can see our Amazon store.
Okay.
And then we are, the big stores that we're in. Our low sugar ketchup is carried in Walmart, and 1,200 Walmarts. We're in Sprouts carries our low sugar and no sugar ketchup and our barbecue sauce. Um, and then you can find us in stores like Safeway Eastern. We're here in the Giant Foods in the DC area, Stop and Shop up north, ShopRite on the east, the northeast, and Lowe's Foods in North Carolina. And you can also find us throughout the Midwest and most of the Midwestern stores, Festival, Sendix, um, Mariano's in Chicago. And then we're going to be launching nationally with Whole Foods next year in April too, and likely Kroger as well. So
Those may be two game changers for you.
yeah, that's what we're
And you
hoping
said
on.
Walmart as well. You're launching in a number of stores with Walmart as well.
Right.
So, well, Abe, I really appreciate you just taking the time today on a rainy Friday afternoon in Virginia. I don't know if it's raining where you
It
are,
is
but where we are, it's
terribly bad.
pouring. But
Yeah, same
it's
here.
just
Yeah.
been a great opportunity just to kind of hear your story and let you share with us. I just love the kind of the entrepreneurial roller coaster and just the transitions that you've made in your life and how all points have kind of led to this point that you're at right now and just where you are. And I appreciate you being so free to share information and just kind of paint the picture for us and really just playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Abe,
Yeah.
thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.